At long last, it is over. Preseason's done. 23-13, the Vikings lose all 3 preseason games in case you were degenerate enough to care about that. It is... Hang on one sec. In case you wanted to bet on the preseason at BetOnline, which you can do that. This is all brought to you by BetOnline. Has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Sam, 13-23. What's your headline coming out of this one? I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings. Sam Ekstrom does the Minnesota football party with me. Producer on Superior Sports Talk, right?
Ron
Tell
Johnson
me what your headline
show.
is. Ron Johnson show.
Yeah. No, you're good. I don't think Kellen Mond makes this football team. I'm sorry. He made a gorgeous teardrop sideline throw tonight. It's not going to save him.
That's not enough.
And in a game where, you field a game day roster smaller than a regular season game, 47 players active, not a ton of compelling storylines, I think, other than the quarterback. And even the quarterback. Like you're basically competing for quarterback 3. It's more about a player that was, invested in fairly highly in terms of draft capital in Mond, a player that's been with the organization for 4 years in Mannion. I'm not sure either of them make their way past Tuesday. Maybe one of them circles their way back to the practice squad, and I'd honestly bet on the veteran Mannion just wanting to stay comfortable and not having anyone else. I'd
probably rather have him in the building, yeah.
Probably in that kind of capacity, you definitely would, because while maybe the ceiling is lower, the decision-making is better, and the study habits are better, but Kellen Mond's final 5 snaps, 4th down, sack, then final drive trying to tie the game, incomplete, sack, pass tipped at the line of scrimmage. Kind of a microcosm of the Kellen Mond experience this late summer, Luke Braun.
Yeah, and it was... Like, all 5 of those snaps, you could argue, were in some way his fault, I think, except for the last sack was pretty instant. But otherwise, there was holding the ball, there was not seeing people. It's all the same stuff. So my thing with Mond right now is like, okay, you're not going to use a roster spot on this guy. You got Nick Mullins, you traded for him, you have your QB2. If Kirk Cousins goes down, it's going to be Mullins. It's not going to be one of these catastrophes. So if he's not QB2, what's the point of giving him a roster spot? It's so you don't have to expose him to waivers, right? To somebody picking him up. And if somebody picks him up, how sad are we? Like, how much of a bummer is that if somebody goes and picks up Kellen Mond and they become somebody else's project? I'm not going to cry many tears. But I do think there are some other things going on in this roster that are interesting. And I think some decisions got made, and I think some decisions got harder. Stuff like Nick Muse had some brutal, just catastrophically brutal drops. We were talking on the Minnesota football party. I made a point. I was like, hey, he might be a dark horse for the roster. Nope. That one's not happening. Guys like Kyle Hinton, that might have been close, I thought had really rough days. But then you had a guy like Miles Dorn, who made quite the closing statement.
People. Yeah. He turned into Lewis Cine. Was that actually Lewis Cine out there? Because that's more
wearing 46, getting some reps.
We've seen from Lewis Cine. Man, I know he got flagged on one. I think it was clean, by the way. I
thought that flag was dumb.
A couple balls. Yeah, I thought so too. It was a hard hit, but you don't flag for hard hits. You flag for illegal hits. I don't think it was an illegal hit. Got his hand on the ball on the pick by Luigi Villain, who, by the way, I think makes the roster. I think Miles Dorn.
Oh, really? I thought he had a catastrophic night.
Really? That's interesting. I think he's had a generally good preseason in camp, and I don't think you want to put too much weight on a game like this. Although, if you were on the bubble, maybe that is the last piece of the evaluation, so I wouldn't rule anything out. I think Dorn was competing for safety 4 with Metellus, and I'm not in any way attached to Josh Metellus being on this team. Now, they have given him reps as such that he's going to be your 4th safety, and they really never have wavered from that, just based on the timeshare in practice. But Dorn tonight looked really, really fascinating to me, and I saw something from him I haven't often seen from Metellus.
Yeah, and Metellus made the team last year and the year before that on special teams. He was fantastic at special teams. That hasn't really shown this preseason, And this new staff is, I mean, they're not going off of what the last staff thought. This is a clean slate, and the what have you done for me lately matters a lot when you switch staffs. So I think Miles Dorn actually made a case to be that fourth safety, and I think the Vikings actually have a decision on their hands that they did not go into the night having. I think that's really cool. I think that's kind of what this game is for. I do want to circle back to Luigi Villon. He had a really interesting night. He had that interception. It's tip drill, right place, right time. So I don't know how much that matters to his evaluation. But one of the rushing touchdowns, it was like a 12-yard rushing touchdown. Luigi Villon gets caught going way too far inside. He's pursuing on a fake. He bites really hard on it, and he doesn't actually get the guy that he's supposed to occupy. On that fit, like he's supposed to occupy the pulling guard. Pulling guard gets out into space and gets to go kill the safety, and then that turns into a walk-in touchdown. And then he had another play like that was another explosive run. That, I think, is going to stick in my head a little bit more than the interception. But hey, who knows what he put together. I thought Zach McLeod had a better opportunity to make the team going in, and he got one pressure at the end of the game, and otherwise I thought he had just too quiet of a night. I still kind of feel like if they're going to keep a fifth outside guy, it's not somebody who's on the roster yet.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I would take Luigi over McLeod from what I've seen on the whole this camp, and this is the last piece of the puzzle that they'll put into the evaluation. Rush defense, as you mentioned, abysmal all night. So, I'd say a lot of culprits everywhere, and definitely not your best run stuffers on the field. So, yeah, a lot of – and, hey, am I surprised that Mike Boone just ran him over? Not at all. The guy's a stud. Severely underutilized in Minnesota. He was, yeah.
T.Y. McGill goes out early in the game.
So, let's talk about that. So, McGill and Dye – out in the first quarter, and usually when guys get pulled that quickly, you assume, oh man, it's serious. Well, if you're hurt at all in a preseason game, they're probably going to pull you. They're not going to make you play through anything. And I actually would have put, I think, both of them as the last guy on the roster at their position. I think that Dye probably linebacker 5 and McGill defensive lineman 9 or 10. I don't know if this changes that. What it might change if the injuries are severe is someone else might get on if they have a 3-week IR stint. You have to take that into account too. If indeed it is something that pushes them out, it looks like it was it a foot for Dye and an ankle for McGill? Did I get that right?
You'll know better than me. I didn't.
I think it was. Yeah, neither of those parts of the body I want to see injured, especially a foot. So. For sure. You might have to hold your breath on Dye and McGill. I'm a lot more bullish on McGill than Dye. I don't know if Dye necessarily played his way onto this roster or if he's just there by default.
Yeah, and there are a couple other players. So I have a bet going right now with Nick Olson, another zone coverage writer, about whose 53-man roster is better, and the winner gets to write a tweet for the loser. A lot of interesting stuff. He had Zach McLeod. I had Oli Udo. Both of those are not looking great. I had guys like Chris Boyd, who I thought had a fantastic night until he gave up one at the end. Hey, if you want to make bets on your own, make sure you go check out betonline.net. It's got all kinds of things you can bet on every single Vikings game, every regular season game, all 262 or however many. You can bet on win total over-unders, where everybody's going to land in the division, and all kinds of other sports as well. That is at betonline.net. There's some other injuries we should probably talk about. Namely, BC Johnson goes out with a knee injury. Now, I don't know if you have any sense for, is that the same knee or is it a different knee? Because I'm going to be a lot more concerned if it's the same knee.
Yeah, I don't have any sense at this time. I'm guessing as we do this, Kevin O'Connell's probably walking to a podium, so he'll probably have some sort of update. He's actually pretty transparent with injury updates. So I bet we'll know by the end of the night whether it's somewhat severe or just precautionary. Naylor concussion as well, so your receiving depth might have taken a little bit of a hit tonight, and it was a foot on Troy Dye. I checked. Fortunately, I think the one that everyone was holding their breath, and I don't know which feed you were watching, the Vikings produced broadcast just said Brian Asamoah is down injured, but they've had this policy to not show injured players, almost like a high school production, which I disagree with that editorial choice. But we didn't know, no one at home knew watching the Vikings broadcast if Asamoah was okay. Obviously he was, because he came back in and made some splash plays. But that this is why they rest 33 guys, is because sometimes the injury bug just kind of hits you bang, 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 and the Vikings have been relatively healthy this preseason, and tonight, man, it really caught up to him. A lot of bubble guys, maybe hurting their case.
Yeah, and so Asamoah did come back and played out the rest of the game, which is really important. But looking at that wide receiver depth, my wide receiver 5 and 6 both got hurt tonight. I had BC and Naylor.
Same.
Yeah, so if those guys are out for any long amount of time, now you're starting to look at guys like Tristan Jackson, who had just a brutal drop. I really thought that's his moment, right? But hey, sometimes the moment's too big for guys. It could be Myron Mitchell coming out of nowhere, or they could just run with fewer and they could go, more 21 personnel or something like that and figure out what they can do with the personnel that they have until everybody else gets healthy. Yeah, I kind of feel like most of what we already thought got confirmed in this game. Miles Dorn was my surprise. Was there anything that happened in this game that really blew you away, that changed what you thought about somebody?
Not really. I mean, Chris Boyd was another player who kind of typified like what he's been for 3 and change years, where he makes plays and he also makes some boneheaded mistakes. Like you pointed out very adroitly on Twitter, like he was mixed up in coverage on that big deep ball. I think he had 7 tackles though. He was around stuff, but how many of those tackles were because of his own poor coverage? Just the up and down experience from Chris Boyd. I think I would award Ty Chandler if he wasn't an automatic rosteree at this point. If he didn't already have it, he got it. 4, right? So he was a little banged up in that San Francisco game. The bookend preseason games, 10 carries for 94 yards. And it wasn't like one of those was a 70-yard run. It was like a consistent 9.4 yards per carry. That's crazy efficient, even in the preseason.
Yeah, really, he was elusive, and he wasn't as smoothly elusive as you see from like starting backs from guys like Cook that can be elusive and also not lose any momentum. But it was gritty. It was making guys miss. He was finding the space where it was there, hitting the right holes and stuff. Great stuff to see that from a rookie. I do want to circle back. That one big completion down the sideline that was some kind of coverage bust. I want to say, so Chris Boyd was playing cover 2, and I think Mike Brown was the safety. Looked like he was playing some kind of quarters. He was caught inside. Don't quote me, but I think that one was on Mike Brown. I think he was the only person not playing cover 2 on the play, but you'll have to look back, because if Chris Boyd's in year 4 busting coverages, that like matters a lot. That becomes a reason to say maybe we're done with this, because he was a little bit of a Zimmer pet project too, and that loyalty's gone. But my read right now is that wasn't the case, but I got to go back and check on that. Look, we are going to do these all the way through the season. Sam and I are going to be live on the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel. You can also find the audio for this on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. So you can find all of this stuff for Sam Ekstrom. I'm Luke Braun, coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.